the machine that outlived the company. It was never supposed to survive. Born in the final years of a struggling manufacturer, this car carried the weight of collapsing finances, shrinking teams, and a future already written in red ink. Most believed it would disappear quietly, forgotten alongside the company that built it. Instead, it refused to die. Today, the machine is remembered not just as a car, but as an anomaly, an artifact of engineering resilience that endured long after its creators vanished. Its story is less about success and more about defiance, persistence, and the strange way purpose can outlast profit. To understand how a single machine outlived an entire company, we must return to the moment when desperation replaced ambition. The manufacturer was running out of time. Investment had dried up. Competitors surged ahead. Layoffs thinned the workforce until only a core group of engineers remained. People who no longer built for bonuses or recognition, but for survival. With nothing left to lose, they abandoned compromise. They stopped chasing trends and focused on fundamentals. Durability over novelty. Serviceability over design flair. Engineering choices were guided not by market research, but by the simple question of what would still function years from now, with minimal support. The car they built reflected that mindset. Its components were over-engineered, not for performance, but for endurance. Materials were chosen for longevity. Systems were simplified until failure points vanished. Even aesthetics took a backseat to function. It wasn't beautiful, but it was honest. Early tests were unremarkable, which is why no one paid attention. It didn't set records. It didn't shock reviewers. It simply worked. And in a company desperate for miracles, "it works" felt insufficient. Executives barely noticed a machine before they disappeared. Bankruptcy followed. Assets were sold. The brand name faded from public memory. Production lines went silent. But somewhere beyond the headlines, the car kept going, sold in small numbers, often to people who value reliability over reputation. It began accumulating miles, then years, then decades. While the company dissolved into history, its machine quietly refused to join it. And that quiet endurance was about to turn into something extraordinary. At first, no one noticed a pattern. Owners simply kept driving and driving. While newer cars cycled through warranties, recalls, and replacements, this machine stayed on the road, accumulating mileage that felt improbable. 200,000 miles, 300, 500,000. The numbers sounded exaggerated. Until mechanics began seeing the same model again and again, returning only for routine service. What puzzled them most was not that the car survived, but how little it asked in return. Components aged slowly. Critical systems showed where without collapse. Parts that should have failed simply didn't. The car behaved like it had been built with a longer memory of the world, one that anticipated neglect, harsh conditions, and the absence of factory support. As the company faded completely, parts availability became a concern, but the engineer's final gift revealed itself here too. The machine used standardized components wherever possible. Bearings, seals, fasteners, all sourced from common suppliers rather than proprietary systems. Owners adapted. Mechanics improvised. Entire communities formed around keeping the car alive, sharing knowledge that replaced official manuals long since lost. Stories began to circulate quietly. A delivery driver who never replaced an engine. A rural family whose car survived generations of use. A fleet operator who realized his oldest vehicles were his most dependable. The machine gained a reputation not through advertising, but through absence. Absence of breakdowns, absence of drama, absence of excuses. Then something unexpected happened. Collectors took interest, not because the car was rare or fast, but because it represented something the modern industry had abandoned. Simplicity, mechanical honesty, longevity without subscription models or digital locks. The machine became a symbol of an era when engineers built with tomorrow in mind, even if the company itself wouldn't see it. As values rose, analysts revisited the company's collapse, searching for irony in the wreckage. They discovered a bitter truth. The machine that could have rebuilt trust arrived too late. It was engineered for endurance in a system that rewarded speed, built to last in an economy that demanded replacement. And so the company vanished. But the car endured. And with every mile it traveled after its maker disappeared, It quietly rewrote the meaning of success, because survival, it turned out, was a form of victory no balance sheet could measure. As the years passed, the machine's endurance began to feel almost defiant. It survived not just wear, but neglect. Owners skipped recommended services. Parts were repaired instead of replaced. Fluids were topped off late. And still, the car kept moving, as if operating on a philosophy older than the industry that abandoned it. Mechanics started documenting what they saw. Internal components showed where patterns that made no sense by modern standards. Stress points were reinforced where other manufacturers saved weight. Tolerances were forgiving, designed to function even when conditions drifted far from ideal. The engineers who built it had assumed a future where support might vanish, and prepared for it. That assumption proved prophetic. When the last official service bulletins disappeared and factory tooling was scrapped, the car entered a new phase of its life. It became self-sustaining through community knowledge. Online forums replaced dealerships. Handwritten diagrams replaced manuals. Owners learned to maintain the machine not because it was fragile, but because it was worth the effort. And something remarkable happened during this transition. The car improved, not mechanically, but culturally. Owners modified it carefully, respecting its original intent. Reinforcements were added where long-term use revealed stress. Cooling pads were refined. Weak components were replaced with stronger equivalents from other industries. The machine evolved slowly, organically, guided by real-world experience rather than market cycles. Meanwhile, the rest of the automotive world moved in the opposite direction. Vehicles grew more complex, more software-dependent, more disposable. Ownership shortened. Repair costs soared. Longevity became an afterthought. Against that backdrop, this car began to look less like a relic and more like a rebellion. Journalists noticed. Articles appeared describing the car that wouldn't die. Photographers sought out high-mileage examples. Engineers from rival companies quietly studied surviving units, curious how a bankrupt manufacturer had accidentally created one of the most durable machines of its era. The irony was impossible to ignore. The company had failed financially, but succeeded philosophically. Its final creation embodied values the industry would later struggle to recover. Transparency, serviceability, restraint. Things that don't trend, but endure. And as those values faded elsewhere, the machine's relevance only grew stronger. But endurance alone doesn't explain its legacy. Because the car didn't just survive the company, it began to outshine it. People stopped asking why the manufacturer collapsed. They started asking why the machine didn't. And that question carried uncomfortable implications for an industry built on planned obsolescence. The car had become evidence, proof that longevity was not only possible, but intentional. And that realization was about to push its story into an entirely new phase. The realization changed how the car was remembered. No longer just a survivor, it became a benchmark. A quiet accusation aimed at an industry that had learned to equate progress with replacement. Engineers began citing it not as a fluke, but as proof that durability was a choice, not an accident. Its influence surfaced in unexpected places. New regulations around right to repair echoed principles this machine embodied decades earlier. Independent manufacturers referenced its architecture when designing long-life components. Even major brands quietly reintroduced ideas once deemed inefficient. Modular assemblies, accessible fasteners, mechanical redundancy, without acknowledging where those lessons came from. The car's community grew into something larger than ownership. It became stewardship. Drivers didn't just use a machine, they preserved it. High-mileage examples were celebrated not for rarity, but for resilience. 1 million miles became a badge of honor. The car turned longevity into culture. Ironically, the company that built it never benefited from its success. Its name lived on only in footnotes and archive searches. But perhaps that was fitting. The machine wasn't built to save a brand. It was built to survive a world without one. And in doing so, it revealed a truth the industry still wrestles with today. Success measured by profit is temporary. Success measured by usefulness endures. The car outlived its maker because it was never designed to impress. It was designed to persist, to remain functional when support vanished, to serve people long after marketing budgets disappeared. In the end, that persistence became its legacy. Not speed, not luxury, not innovation headlines. Longevity. The machine that outlived the company proved that engineering, when stripped of ego, can transcend failure. That a single honest creation can outlast institutions, trends, and even the ambitions that birthed it. And as long as one of these cars still rolls down a road somewhere, maintained by hands that never knew its creators, the company that built it has not truly disappeared. Sometimes the most enduring legacy isn't the name that fades away, it's the machine that refuses to. The machine